Looking for some hot tips to keep your dogs cool this summer? You're in the right place. The temperature's going up. We all need to be really careful about our dogs overheating. Now, a lot of people worry about high temperatures, and of course, that's a huge part of the risk. But in fact, the biggest thing we need to be worried about is high humidity levels. Why? Let's have a little physics lesson. Now, I'm sure we've all heard someone say it's not so bad because it's a dry heat. It's all to do with the humidity and our sweating. As the sweat reaches our body surface and is picked up into the air, that creates a cooling effect. Now, if the conditions are really dry, there's a lot of capacity for that liquid to be picked up by the surrounding air, and therefore the cooling effect is greater. In really humid conditions, the air can't pick up as much moisture, and especially if there's not a lot of wind. So instead of this perspiration being picked up and cooling our bodies, it sits there on the surface, making us feel hotter and more miserable. And what's this got to do with dogs? Dogs can't sweat, they pant. So they're relying on the same type of cooling system as we are when we're sweating, but it's all coming from the tongue, and it's even less efficient than our sweating is for us, especially in the humidity. So in really hot conditions, if your dog exercises, its body temperature is going to race up really high. But if it's dry heat, it can potentially come back down again fairly rapidly. In humid conditions, the temperature outside doesn't even need to be that high. But as your dog exercises, their body temperature starts to climb. But because it's humid, it's not able to then lose that heat. So over time, that temperature actually builds and builds and builds, and they can't cool down efficiently. So in really hot weather, it's possible that your dog can suffer from heat stroke purely because their body temperature soars so high. In humid conditions, they can suffer from heat stroke at much lower temperatures because their body temperature stays elevated for a much longer period. So the reason that's important is that at lower temperature, but high humidity, we should be exercising just as much, if not more, caution when it comes to taking our dogs out and exercising them as we would on a hot day. So while people think that taking their dogs out for a walk or a run first thing in the morning is a good way to reduce their risks, and it's certainly better than taking them out in the heat of the day, the ideal time to take them out is actually toward the end of the day. That way temperatures are only going to be on their way down. Another way that you can reduce your dog's risk is by doing away with a lot of physical exercise altogether. I would always rather my dog miss a walk than suffer from heat stroke. So I've got a few cool ways to make sure your dogs aren't getting too hot this summer, and also keep their minds nice and busy. Some other great tips for helping to keep your dog cool and keep their minds active are some of these icy treats. So what I've got is one of these silicone cupcake trays. Now here's a little hot tip for you guys. These make really great ice cubes and they take a lot longer to melt. So I'm going to be using these for our dog treats as well. The other thing with ice cubes is some people like to put ice cubes in their dog's water bowls. And great, that will keep that water nice and cool, but the cubes melt really quickly. So there's another tip that I'm going to give you on that front. For my little treat tray, I'm just taking a few little bits of their normal kibble, and that way I know that I'm not giving them anything that they shouldn't have, but it's going to be something they're going to be interested in snacking on. So once I've scattered a few little bits of kibble into each tray, the next step is obviously adding water, but I've actually got some boiled water. The reason I'm using boiled water is that I want the kibble to actually disperse a little bit in the water. That way the water will actually taste like the kibble and really encourage the dogs to have a good lick. I mentioned earlier about using ice cubes to keep your dog's water cool, but how that tends to melt very quickly. So another little cool tip that I've got is to half fill your dog's water bowl with water and then freeze that. You then get your normal tap water or bottled water, whatever is your preference. Top that up and you've got cold water that's going to stay cold a lot longer. So the other little thing we've got is our little mini frozen treats. What's the opposite of baked? So because it's silicone, it comes out really easily. And let's see what they think. I think we'll call that a success. When the weather's this nice, it can be hard to stay indoors. But with the help of a paddling pool and some treats, we can enjoy the sunshine safely. You might be surprised to find that it's not always easy as just setting up the pool and letting them take over. Fortunately, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. A light scattering of kibble certainly gets them interested in the water. And instead of bobbing for apples, this time we're bobbing for little bits of sausage. The good thing about these little pools is he can drink out of them, he can have a paddle in them, but they're also not too deep for the chihuahuas to get involved should they decide to brave the waves. And eventually even Fred can't resist a paddle. But Ned seems to be happy just to watch things from the sidelines. So staying safe in the hot weather doesn't mean you have to miss out on the fun.